So we hit record and everyone got quiet. Is that how it works around here? All right, sorry, I'm just staring at my browser for a sec to make sure the YouTube stream is working. There we go. All right, cool.
Hello.
Done. Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. So, new faces, old faces, and they've got Hollywood Squares. I love it. Let's see how many we can get in the box here. So, we're talking today, and if we meander a bit, it's fine, but the main focus is to try to look at where is student inquiry or student design or collaboration with students in designing what it is that we're doing while we're trying to teach and learn from our homes or wherever we may be. The idea, of course, of student-led inquiry into curriculum has been something we've been trying to do for a long time. So it's not a new idea. It's just that, again, I keep bringing this up. Some of my concerns about what's going on now is, are we handing out too many worksheets? Are we doing too many fill in the blanks, too many obvious prompts? Because of the scramble for we have to teach them, we have to give them stuff to do. So this has come up as our third talk, and so this part of it we haven't really addressed yet. So I want to just kind of get into it right away, and then maybe as you think of something to say, you could just tell us a little bit about who you are, so we get some of the context of what you're bringing to your answer. I think that'll be helpful. Just a quick little intro of, hey, I am, and tell us what you think. So I'm Dr. Brian Sanders, working right now in a K-6 private school in Los Angeles as the computer science teacher. Official title is academic technology specialist. And I spent over 20 years in high school English, blending technology, ed tech ideas with the high school English classroom. So I've got a new role and a new title, and I'm investigating the intersections of all these different things that we're trying to talk about. So what do you got? I'll restate the question. What role do you think in COVID-19 EDU should student inquiry have in the design of what it is that we're doing in this new classroom setting?
Hey, I'm Verena, or I'm Dr. Verena Roberts. I work with graduate and undergraduate education students right now, but I've also worked in K-12 and hope to go back in September. I would love to say that I was talking to Susan about this right at the beginning. I was tweeting and talking about how learning design and inquiry really needs to be considered as we consider learning to pivot. However, what I learned very quickly was my colleagues and fellow teachers are so overwhelmed that it's not that they don't want to do it. That I don't think that's it at all. I just think that there's just too many things going on for them to intentionally plan even beyond a week. So I just don't think they're ready yet. Anyway, that's and I'm not being like mean, or I'm not being I think I'm being realist. I think it's unfair to expect that, even though I might want it as a parent. I'm just like, I don't think it's a fair expectation. So that's my 2 cents.
Same, I'll chime in here, Brian. I'm Shannon Tbaldo. I'm with Loyola Marymount University School of Education. I founded the Ideal Institute, which is Innovation in Digital Education and Leadership. So we are kind of right in our time right now where we're being asked to support a lot of schools and a lot of teachers during this transition. And what you said is student inquiry was always supposed to be in our classroom, in our live, in our face-to-face in our face-to-face teachings, and was it happening all across the board? No, because there's other things that are happening, and I agree with Verena that teachers right now are trying to do what is absolutely necessary, and that might not be 100% student inquiry right now. Does it mean that it's not possible? Absolutely not. Possible is it could be there. Do they know how to do it with fidelity? Probably not in this environment. And so it's sort of our job to create that conversation around how to introduce student inquiry when the time is right on this journey. Chances are that, you know, some folks might think they're coming back sooner rather than later, and other folks know that they're going to be close to the end of the year. So when is the right time to introduce that? Is kind of a question that is up in the air, but also how to do it. We need to be educating teachers who are ready to do it, how to do it. That's my opinion.
So I'd like to jump in. Dr. John Wick here, also in K through 8 Catholic school education. I've been a principal, and I've always been kind of on the forefront of doing ed tech. I was a tech coordinator for over 10 years. And as such, I'm currently a middle school science teacher. And I even find myself as a teacher right now, not, of course, in the ideal situation of having to build this curriculum out the way I would if I intentionally built this to be a online course. I am very much in the, as Shannon said, get it done. And as Dr. Renna said, you know, I'm trying to get by week to week and pull out, even with everything that I've got, all the tools at my disposal and my experience. Yeah, I could throw in some things like Flipgrid. I could throw in some interactive things, live sessions, asynchronous sessions, all that kind of stuff. But trying to do it in a way where I can assess, you know, are these kids really learning it? And when I meet one-on-one with them, it's very difficult. So you know, I find myself, I've scaled way back. I'm definitely not doing as, and I think that's a mistake a lot of teachers are making right now, is they're trying to do everything they did before this hit. And it has to be scaled back to a point where we can do what we want to do with intentionality and get to a point, and I love where, you know, Dr. Sanders is coming from, where we can build in that student inquiry. I can tell you right now, even with this as an expertise in my field, I'm nowhere near there. But I think every week that goes by, I'm getting closer. It's just going to take some time.
I'll chime in. I'm Susan Spellman-Can, and I was an educator for 39 years, presently a psychologist, but a retired school counselor. And so I was thinking, you know, there's so much to add to this conversation from a learner standpoint, but also I think from a psychological standpoint to understand, you know, I pivoted online 8 years ago. And so I remember clearly what that was like to be a learner and to be a constant learner, even to this day. Sometimes I think, oh, you know what, I know how to do that. I know how to problem solve that. I know how to get that. I know how to collaborate with people, all the things that we want students to do. And I have to kind of step back and think, what was that like for me being a learner? And I did like, sort of like what's happening now. I jumped online as quickly as I didn't even know how to jump online, but I jumped online. So I think about having the compassion for those who are struggling, not just the educators, because they probably are, not probably, they are. There are a lot of educators who are struggling. So I'm reminded to keep it simple and be compassionate to yourself. Know that you don't have to have it all figured out. And what would you be doing in your classroom? You know, we are educators and intelligent people who have had to make lots of difficult decisions with kids. So how can we take each day and learn one small new thing while helping kids and not trying to do too much? Because really, there's how many months left in the school year? If you just try to bring it down to what can I do today? Is there one new thing? And you say to your kids when you get online, if you get online, you know, I'm learning, and it's going to take me some time, but are there some small things that we can do? I was thinking today, I wondered if we did nothing and had a group who actually did absolutely nothing. We're so worried about kids not learning, but do they actually learn in school? Some of them, they may, and I hope they do. I hope they're with an educator that provides that. But what if we did nothing but the basics of love and kindness and spending time with your family and getting out and doing some exercise and doing some, you know, interesting things at home? What if we did nothing with the and we tested those kids, we had a control group and found out, did it really make a huge difference? All the things that educators are trying to do at once to help kids. Anyway, I'll stop there, but just a lot of thoughts.
Those are nice thoughts. Who'd like to jump in? We're still talking, those of you joined in a little after the intro, just trying to look at student inquiry. What role does it have, should it have ever historically, but maybe looking specifically, what role can it have now? And then when you answer, just give us a little intro of who you are, where you're coming from.
My name is Mary Grant. I'm a computer science teacher, computer specialist, technologist specialist at a high school. I came from middle school, now it's first year high school for me. What I'm experiencing is, for example, one of the things I teach is photography, and that's a really good opportunity for kids to be creative. I don't have to have a DSLR camera. The kids can just use their phones. What I'm struggling with though is, do I embrace this opportunity of taking pictures of things that are not normal, or do we take pictures of things that are random acts of kindness and those opportunities? So you're talking about inquiry. I'm struggling to look at the COVID-19 as an inquiry thing, or are the kids just over it? And I'm getting 50-50 from students. Some kids are like, yeah, I'm interested in moving on and, you know, embracing this and seeing the path that it takes me on. Or some kids are like, I don't even want to talk about it. I'm over it. So that's where I'm struggling with doing COVID or not doing COVID as an inquiry. And some kids are willing to embrace it. Some kids are like, I'm over it. So I'm not sure if anybody else is experiencing that and putting this out to their students, but yeah, so those are those kind of things. If they want to talk about it, they want to, and then some kids don't want to talk about it.
Right, and then just to clarify, that is actually a good point too, like to put the whole situation as an inquiry question, but also specifically I'm trying to get at, you know, what are they interested in other than COVID-19, what the traditional curriculum that we'd already planned out, you know, back in September or even earlier in many cases. But that's a great point though too. Like I bet there are plenty of educators seizing this opportunity to study all kinds of things about how, you know, the coronavirus. I actually didn't even know the word coronavirus until a few months ago, even though there are lots of them. You know, whether or not I should direct that as the teacher to be the topic of study, you know, is still in question. Claudia,
Go for it.
jump in, unmute yourself. Do you want me to unmute you?
I thought you had. Okay. Hi, everyone. I think I'm a friend of Brian's, and I am a high school teacher. So I have 155 students, which is, I think, a little bit different than most of you. I also have two very distinct groups. I have freshmen and I have AP students. And as many of you know, AP just came down and said, you're all taking the AP exam and it's going to be 45 minutes. So my struggle has been, how do I keep motivating my kids to be able to take that exam. And then I have these ninth grade kids who this was their first year in high school, feel overwhelmed by the experience already. And how do I help them gauge through, try to navigate through all of this and find some kind of sense of it? So I'm also a Facing History teacher. I don't know if any of you guys know what Facing History teacher. It's actually a wonderful program that really helps teachers help students see themselves as upstanders, as someone that stands up for their community rather than just being bystanders of what's going on. So I took this as an opportunity to have my students look around them and say, I want you to find in your community, who are the upstanders? What are people doing? Who are the bystanders? Who are those people that are not following the rules because they're trying to be rebellious, but how can they put people in danger? And I'm trying to engage them through, in Google Classroom, we do, we do separate little questions that they can answer, and they have a simulated discussion. I also use Flipgrid for them to express themselves when they're feeling overwhelmed. But I will say, one of the things that has really been difficult for me, and just looking at our group here, is how many of those kids really have access to all of this. I see some of you have changed your background. Some kids don't have an environment where they can log on. I have a quiet little room in my house where I can come in, close the door, and I'm by myself. And AP is expecting my students to sit down quietly for 45 minutes. Some of them live 7 people to 1 room. So those are the challenges I'm really encountering with this new reality. And I think inquiry can be a wonderful way of helping them navigate. So that's why I was coming to listen to all of you and your ideas for how do I make my work more inquiry based.
Thanks for sharing, Claudia. Jump on in. Who's next?
Hi, everyone. I'm James Pike. I teach 4th grade in Downey, and just happy to come on here and hear all these great ideas. And I love the fact that your name is John Wick, Mr. John Wick, and you totally got the right room for it as well. So keep doing what you're doing. Love those dogs. So some things that, like, when this all hit for us, it felt like I was on a boat and my ship got blown up, and I had to gather all my students together. So I tried to more focus on engagement to see how many of them I can save. So and then from that, I tried to I made a list. I organized it. Are the kids talking? Are the parents talking? Are they both talking? Or have they disappeared? And from that, I've kind of been able to figure out where they are as a family. Did someone get laid off? Are the kids just sitting at the house bored all day, dying for things to do? And then that's kind of where I think we can pinpoint the families that would really benefit from the inquiries versus families that would benefit from more just kind of simple checking in. So that way we kind of go over kindness and give that where we need that, and higher level instruction where that's necessary. So, and the idea is that you try to move the kids up into the higher levels, but first, I have a kid who just family picked up and moved to Mexico, and they're trying to Zoom me on iPhones and do their work on Google Classroom. That's impossible. So these are all kind of interesting challenges that we have to face, but I, for one, don't want to lose the last 2 months of the school year. And, I've always been a loving teacher, so I'll just help out whenever I can. On COVID versus not COVID, I did have my students write an essay on the pandemic. I got a variety of answers, and from there I can see the kids who are more sensitive to talk about it, so I kind of put a probe out, and kids who can really take this and use this as a way to run with it. But that's where I'm at right now.
Hi,
Come on
everybody.
in.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Walker. I'm a secondary digital learning specialist in Edina, Minnesota, where it's actually in the 60s today, and sunny, which is nice. So I work in a fairly affluent school district outside of Minneapolis, and we are one-to-one. We worked really hard to get all of our third through fifth graders devices out to them because normally they're in the carts in the classroom. So 3 through 12, all the students have a device. So I definitely realize the privilege that we are existing in this trauma-filled time, and so that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. When we initially rolled things out, I kind of said to the staff, I said, they will be talking about this 100 years from now. And, I think we're seeing that, and that the first things you need to be thinking about are your own personal health and safety, and that of your family, and both your mental and physical health. And when kids aren't turning in something, the first question should be, are you and your family okay? So I appreciate the question that Mary had about, do you teach COVID or not? I think what we have seen, I've seen some chats with teachers just kind of checking in with kids, where it's how you doing and stuff, where they're able to kind of share how things are really going for them or their family. But then also teachers, one of our STEM teachers who is distributed some of the 3D printers out, and so that kids, if they want to print the visor components to help surgical mask stuff, that they can do that, or fax teachers creating masks for people to, having kids create masks and things like that. Thinking about the inquiry piece, what I've been really thinking about when we started this, we were thinking about this is emergency stuff we need to get, because we had started training last fall for if it's a snow day or a bad weather day, not if there was a pandemic. And so people kind of knew, oh, I just have to post this assignment and kids will do it. And if they complete it, they attended class. Well, now we're kind of shifting because we realize this is going to be our reality for the rest of the year. So what are other things that we can be thinking about, and how do we shift to really a truly online environment? And that's kind of what I've been working on the last few days. This morning, I had kind of a very inspiring conversation with a teacher who's an AP teacher who feels like the weight of preparing for all of the AP has been taken off their shoulders. And he's kind of excited about exploring some different things with inquiry and other stuff. And so I helped him kind of do some planning for a Google Meet on Thursday with a 100-year-old D-Day veteran, where it's his old football coach's dad. And so the son is going to have his phone there and help his dad get on the meet. And then for as ever long as this 100-year-old wants to talk and share his experience, he's going to do that with the class, and kids are going to be able to listen in and ask questions. And so I'm kind of excited about that. But I think more of those types of things where teachers are going to be, hey, I can have an expert come in and talk about this topic and use the affordances that we have available to kind of enhance things a little bit in a different way than what we might have been doing in a face-to-face.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of great ideas, and I know a couple of you haven't had a chance to talk yet, so I don't want to occupy the room, but I just want to try to reiterate a couple of things. And just looking at, I see there are a number of people on Twitter trying to talk about how, maybe this is not really a teaching experience, but more of a learning experience. So more that like teachers need to be learning a whole new set of skills, but also perhaps maybe focusing on helping, maybe inquiry is kind of mucking the waters here, and maybe it's just the focus on learning ought to be emphasized. And I'm hearing a lot of great ideas about, maybe differentiating and being more responsive, and like, then, trying to pull together from a compassionate point of view, not just in terms of what people are going through, but also, just the realities of access and all the, all the same, the digital divide that we've known about for years is just being, amplified and enhanced during the day rather than, before school and after school. Now it's during school. So, it's odd in that way and troubling. So, but anyway, I want to bring it back to all of you, whoever wants to jump in next, but just like maybe we could refocus even some of what we're talking about here, and just try to look at what are some of the best practices for helping students to find their learning path, given whatever they might be facing at home.
I'm going to jump in and answer something that Claudia brought up about the AP. So I have a daughter who's in grade 10, so 15-year-old, and she asked yesterday, she's like, her foundational or the key themes in grade 10 in social studies are globalization. So she's like, wait a minute, isn't like, how can my textbook, how can the curriculum be correct when we talk about globalization if COVID just turned everything upside down? And I'm like, that is a really deep thought. Good for you. She's like, so why is my teacher trying to teach me from a textbook? Like, and we already know many times things are behind anyway, but it was just like it hit her. She's like, so this is like a complete waste of time. And so Claudia, I can feel your frustration, because all I can suggest when we think about inquiry or learning or anything else is we have to encourage them to think like that. And then when I said, well, why don't you ask your teacher if you could just write whatever you think about what does globalization look like now that COVID has, I don't know, something very theoretical, and get help and ask experts and do whatever, which is very inquiry, obviously. But she's like, oh, that's too scary, Mom. No, that's, I don't want to go against my teacher. So it's not only the AP exams and things that aren't making sense, is those traditions and those confinements, those boxes that people are trying to keep us in, that I think those are the ones, if a child is figuring it out, then that's when I'm like, uh-oh, now we're in trouble. Anyway, I was just thinking about that yesterday.
Can I jump in on that? So I think that's actually opens up to a great inquiry question. COVID is probably the most globalizing thing that's happened to us. I mean, think about it. This is a shared experience beyond anything we've ever had in modern history. Like maybe since like the plague, except the plague, they didn't have the technology to keep things, to like still have these conversations. And I think, but yeah, COVID has thrown that particular AP topic on its head, but could also open the ways to some good inquiry questions. But I don't know if that helps. And also for the packets and the work things that go home, I'm in elementary. That's good for the base level. The parents can understand it. It really got my class up and started. But now I'm trying to conduct classes online and try to create a normal-ish feeling where people can see their friends and stuff.
I read a tweet the other day, and I can't remember who it was by, but it said, hey, all of you teachers out there, have you ever taken an online course? Most of us have maybe had one in our lifetime, maybe two. Now imagine you're in junior high and you have 6 to 9 online courses that, by the way, you didn't agree to. Your teacher didn't agree to be an online teacher. I'm embellishing the tweet, but there's so many distractions at home. There's so many challenges at home. There's access or no access. There's family issues going on, health and all different kinds of issues that are happening in our home life. We cannot expect these students in the K-12 space and to adapt the way we as educators, I mean, we're feeling the adaptation challenges as even more so and probably as much as them. And so I keep thinking to myself, what are we doing? And what is this going to look like when we come back? I can't expect a student who is not super motivated, where I'm in my classroom, I'm trying to get them motivated. Now imagine they have YouTube in front of them or Disney Plus that they can stream right now. Why would they be motivated to log in to do anything in this manner? And then you have the other students who can't get enough because this is their escape or this is something that they're driven for. So you have intrinsic and extrinsically motivated students, whether they're in school or whether they're not. We're facing these challenges in a time that is unprecedented. I think of also, just to go back to what Mary was saying, is having an opportunity. I mentioned I have a kid in 6th grade, and so I was like, he needs to be keeping a journal about this, because this is, I don't like to make it say it's an Anne Frank moment, but it's an Anne Frank moment. Our kids are home in a home. It's not 400 square feet, thank God, but in some cases there are trials and tribulations that could be documented photographically and writing literature wise for these kids to journal and just be able to pass this on. Kids are missing birthdays, kids are missing events and births and deaths. All of these things are being missed because we're in this global situation. So I feel like it's a challenge for us as educators to figure out how to motivate kids in this space, and perhaps finding, kind of what James was saying, finding out what's kind of pushing their buttons and where they're at. And then really we have an opportunity to personalize the education, which is one of my main passions, is personalizing education, utilizing the tools that we have available to us now. And so those are just some of my thoughts as you guys were all talking before of, gosh, what a great opportunity, Mary, to have a photo journal compilation of what was happening in their lives at this time with a reflective piece at the end of it. Just my thought.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they embrace that. Like I'm not quite starting it yet, but I hope that they embrace it. But going back to your point, Shannon, is that I need to know where they're at, because I know that some students, because I teach high school, I found out a majority of my students in my class are actually working right now. They weren't working before. So now they got hired on as working at the grocery stores because the grocery stores need people. So my students aren't even at home to learn. And then they come home and they're going to have to do schoolwork. I don't even know if that's possible. So I'm excited about it. Actually, I'm excited about a lot of things, because I think this particular group, we know that there's so many opportunities, but then I get excited and then I hear the stories and I'm like, oh, that's not going to work for that kid. I get it. So I think we have a lot of passion and we're excited, but I don't know what's going to happen from there. So, but I'm going to put it out there and hopefully that they embrace it, but I have to know the realities as well. And so in knowing those stories, Shannon's, I think is important too. Yeah. Thanks for saying that.
See, it's interesting because of these trauma-filled times, I'm seeing such a wide range. One of the teachers that I follow on Twitter, Tom Rademacher, who was a Minnesota Teacher of the Year, tweeted out that one of his students told him that she was writing 5,000 words a day. And he's like, I wanted to stop communicating with her because she's making me feel bad. And then we also have kids in our district that we've been told have locked themselves in their room and refuse to get the computer out to do any work. And so it's such a broad scope. So I've been trying to push to my staff some of the tolerance.org materials on teaching through trauma as a way to kind of relate to those to kids and kind of, you know, focus on the relationships first. It's just such a huge thing, and there's such a push for some high achievers that we need to really keep the rigor up. And I'm like, wait a minute. Do you realize what's going on here? That can't happen. So, you know, I think as educators, we know what's best for kids, and reminding people that are pushing for more rigor to kind of take a breath and think about what you're asking kids to be doing right now.
Yeah, I just want to touch on what Michael was saying there, because just today I sent an email to my principal, and I was talking about, you know, where, like what Shannon and Murray's talking about, meeting the kids where they're at. It's so hard, but I'm excited about it because I think this is the one time where, because of this crisis, I can meet them where they're at, and there's no like, well, why didn't you get that assignment turned in? Why didn't this happen? Like, no, look, we're facing a very difficult situation here, and yeah, I'm accepting stuff that I wouldn't accept, you know, when we were in a physical classroom, like 2-3 weeks late. Of course, I'm going to do that. But that should have been going on even in the physical classroom. Like it's opened up my eyes to some of that, where why do we set these arbitrary boundaries of due dates and things like that? Obviously, there has to be a date where grades go in because that's how the system's set up. But until that date, like, I want to work with them on just learning. And, you know, like where these kids are at, I think the mistake has been that we, like what Michael was saying, trying to keep them doing what we've always done and keeping that rigor up. So like this morning I wrote an email to my principal and I said, and I felt weird writing it, but I also felt good. Yeah, I just want you to let you know, I've scaled back the rigor. Like the stuff I'm putting out right now is not going to be super hard, challenging. They are stressed out. They are mad. Like even today in like my live one-on-one kind of question and answer session that I hold, it just got to being like, hey, how are you? What's going on? What's happening in your family? Like, and I'm like, yeah, this is okay. We need to get away from this. Has to be just academic, because this is bigger than that. And our classroom should always be like that. But I like that we can actually step back and say, I'm giving the students what they need, meeting them where they're at, and helping them grow from that point emotionally as well as academically.
Yeah, I think this time in history is a time more than ever that we need to collaborate. I was in a self-directed high school for 5 years, and you know, with students from all kinds of different backgrounds, all kinds of special needs, all kinds of ways of learning. And so I think if we realize that we all need each other, and we have to have someone that we can talk to and say, you know, this is difficult for me. This is not just difficult for me. We are, I think I said this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. We are all collectively grieving. So it's the first time in history that we are all trying to help others while making sure that we help ourselves. And we've never, ever, ever had that before. You know, we're grieving the loss of changes in our family, changes in our schools, changes in life, period. And so how do we do this? And having those conversations with kids is learning. It's learning for us. And so if we can learn to connect with others who are feeling some of the feelings that we're feeling, and encourage our young people to do the same, we're learning. And we need to be patient and kind and understanding so that we get through this together. And so I appreciate that you're cutting back on some of the rigor. It doesn't mean the rigor is not important, but is it really important at this time? And there's going to be the kids that are going to jump through the rigor anyway. They're going to say, okay, I'm going to work on this and do something phenomenal while I'm at home, because my teacher opened it up to how can you self-direct? Like, what can you do? What do you want to do right now? There have been times in my teaching over the 39 years that I threw out the curriculum. And some of the best teaching and learning probably took place when I did that. So I think it can happen.
I was
So-
hoping to give credit. I'm sorry, Joe. Can I give credit to the person that I quoted on Twitter? Because I found him. It's Sean Peck 6, and he says, "Have you ever taken an online class? How about 6 at once? When you were a teenager with spotty Wi-Fi and Schoology crashing and needing to share a device with siblings while trapped at home, filled with fear and anxiety? Yeah, me neither. Let's cut these kids some slack." And I think that hits everything that we've all just been talking about. So
How
thanks.
do you
I
spell
didn't mean to
Sean?
interrupt you.
No, how do you spell Sean?
SHAUNPECK and the number 6.
So Susan opened up the point I've been working on for the last 10, 15 years, this whole idea of the curriculum. And so I have a couple of points that I wanted to make. And first of all, I'm in a different situation. So I work with 30 kids, and it's a contextual learning environment versus a curricular learning environment. You know, I don't want to change the conversation that you guys all are having, but it's considerably different in my situation, and it's different in a lot of good ways, I think. The first thing I would comment on is that you can't stop kids from learning. They're going to learn no matter what, because they're learning from their context. The illustration that I have is my then 4-year-old granddaughter. I took her to Columbus, Ohio, and pointed across the room and said, "That's my brother." And she looked in horror and said, "Grandpa, you're a boy, you can't have a brother." And that was clearly from her context. Her world existed of her brother and her mom and her mom's brother. Everybody in her world and in her context came in a boy-girl pair. And so she was doing science, she was doing inquiry, she was learning. That is how we learn. The kids are learning all kinds of things outside of our curriculum, outside of our classroom walls. It's just how can we, in this learning to pivot moment, find ways of helping them, guiding them into inquiries and into things that bring them into conflict, so that their new meaning, that's like that conflict my granddaughter had, brought her into a new understanding that people don't come in boy-girl pairs. The same sort of thing as the 10th grade girl realizing the whole globalization issue was bigger than just saying, you know, so there were some issues. I would bring up 3 points. The first, I think, is that in this learning to pivot, we're realizing that the digital divide and the motivational divide are no longer inconveniences. These are things that have to be dealt with. It used to be that you could say, well, the digital divide, you know, they're going to school, but there's no longer, we can, in all honesty, look at this and say that there's any way that the digital divide is no longer an inconvenience. It's a necessity for us to fix. I think too, and the second thing in this learning to pivot, we have to do a better job of getting kids to recognize that they're learning. I can't tell you how many times in my career that kids believe they're only learning when they're in a classroom and being taught. I had an AP physics student once. I showed her some data on a weather data. It had a barometric pressure versus rainfall. And when the pressure fell, you could see that it rained. And I showed it to her. I said, "What do you see here?" She says, "Oh, we haven't learned about barometric pressure yet." And it wasn't a question about barometric pressure. It was, do you see a relationship here? But again, do a better job in this learning to pivot, doing a better job of getting adults and kids to realize that learning is taking place outside of just being told. That, I think, will get the kids to recognize. That's like, I'm amazed at my grandkids. We go online and talk in the evenings, and some of the things, I know my grandson knows all of the dinosaurs. Nobody taught him that. he listened to it. He read about it. People read to him about it. And so they are learning, but they don't recognize that they're learning because they're not in school, and they associate learning with school. So what they do in school is learning, and what they do outside of school, they just know, and with no effort and no pain. So the second thing is learning and not knowing it. The third thing is and this is where I kind of go over the edge, because inquiry, I believe, is imposed on a curricular model. And because we have a curricular model, we're running into some of these troubles with doing online, because we're trying to take a potentially rich new way of doing things and imposing our old model on it. And so when we start looking at curriculum, like in science, I'm a science person, and people try to get inquiry in science, they're imposing inquiry into their curriculum. Whereas in fact, if they were doing science, the inquiry is embedded in what you're doing. It's not something you have to impose. One of the things that I have done, and again, I recognize I only have 30 kids. I don't have 150 like some of you may, that kind of thing. But what I've done is we're looking at several things that they need to learn. One of the things, we have this institute model that we're doing. It's a contextual model. Their assessment is how have they added value to the institute. And so instead of taking an Algebra 1 class, at the end of your Algebra 1 class, I doubt if anybody asked, how is next year's Algebra 1 class better because you were there? Yet we want them to have this social understanding, but we never value it in most of the things we do in school. And so their assessment is, how are they adding value to the institute? And so the inquiry is, they need to come up with ways of doing that. And so then they're, going out to different websites. They're trying to find people that they can interview. They're writing articles. They're tweeting, that sort of thing. So those are the points that I would bring to the table. And I hope I'm not too far out of line with what you guys are trying to do. This is my first visit. I've known Brian for years. So, in the good and the bad.
Troublemakers. Yeah, great thoughts, Joe. Those are really very helpful summaries, and also, I think, ways to push us forward. So I want to be respectful of time, because we obviously have lots of things to do. And I know that a couple of you haven't had a chance to talk, so I just want to make sure that you do get a chance to talk. Fatima, Kirsty?
Hi. So I'm in a slightly different position in that I'm in Scotland in the UK, but facing exactly the same challenges as everybody else is at the moment. I think one of the things that's been really obvious for us in our practice is moving from trying to do the same as we were doing at school, and looking at how are we going to do things differently? How are we going to use this to do something new and something different? The idea of just trying to exactly replicate the school day was not working for our families at all. We're fortunate is perhaps the wrong word, but we have had 2 weeks of school closures, and we're now on a 2-week Easter break. So those 2 weeks were our time that we said openly to families and to young people, let's have a shot, let's do this together. Staff, we don't know how to go about this yet, and let's try and work out what parts of our practice from school are going to translate into this new world and what parts are not going to translate, and looking at trying it together with the children, with the young people. I work in with 11-year-olds, so I'm a class teacher of 11-year-olds, which is our final year of primary school before they move on to high school. So normally I wouldn't have a huge amount of contact directly with my parents, Whereas over the course of these past 2 weeks, one really, really positive thing that has come out of this is it has been whole families that have been engaged. So I've had so much more contact with my parents, with the siblings of the kids that I teach, and lots of whole family learning. So lots of little brothers and sisters jumping in on calls when I'm working with the older pupils, and vice versa. My guys going in and supporting younger children while they're trying to do things. Something else that's been really, really, really important is face-to-face interaction. We've been really fortunate that we were able to get off the ground really quickly with video calling because of some of the procedures we had in school already, and that real interaction, especially with younger pupils, you know, our little ones are 5. They can't read documents or do worksheets, and that's not how any 5-year-old is ever going to learn anything. It's through people and talking and interaction, and bizarrely in this world where we're all living in isolation, it's the interaction and the link with people that's been really important.
Thank you.
So,
yeah,
that's
good.
my little bit.
That's very well said, and a good reminder. Fatima, are you still there? You want to jump in, or should I wrap up? So, all right. Well, I think, gosh, I'm inspired. I have a lot of things on my mind. I don't want to just blurt them all out. I want to gather my thoughts, but so I'm going to try to end here. Verena, maybe you can help me take it out since we're co-hosts, and I'm going to start putting out some more documentation of what we've been talking about today, but also the previous 2 sessions, and then try to collate some questions, some themes that are emerging, because I think that, you know, the people in this room and the people that have been in the other 2 and whatever comes next week as we do this weekly, so many great ideas that I haven't seen expressed and articulated in the way that we're able to put together when we're just doing this live. So I think it's really helpful for me. I hope it's helpful for you and to all of our YouTube viewers. So so stay tuned. I'm definitely going to invite you all back, and if you can come, great. And if you can't, then there's always the week after. And we don't know how long we're going to be doing this, probably till the year 2075. So if you want to just put it on your calendar until then, that'll be great. And I don't know. I'm a little tongue-tied because I just got a lot on my mind. I'm feeling, you know, I'm brimming with ideas right now.
I'm just going to end things off. We're working on a blog, and the blog is not meant to be a space to like build community and talk. That is actually not. It's all the ideas that we're talking about. And if any of you want to like own a section on the blog, or like you're talking, add a little bit more. So it's a space for people to go to when they've heard an idea from here. And so we're hoping you'll take a piece of that blog and add to it. If community develops from it, that's awesome. But the goal is just to kind of have a space for the ideas and actually get some resources out there too, to help people figure out the how, like you were talking, Kirsty and others, the how, when people are ready is really important as well. So we're in transition, working on both of those right now. But on that note, I guess we will see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next. You know, keep thinking, keep dreaming. You know, looking at learning. But I think, and I'll leave you. I was going to say one thing. I said I wouldn't, but I'm going to. I think that we should take this moment to also think about mobilizing in a political way and getting ourselves organized towards some effort to talk about and make suggestions as educators internationally, how to solve the problems that we've been saying. Okay, we solved it by having kids show up to the physical classroom, but we're not solving it now. So how are we handling it? Let's make some suggestions together. I haven't seen any group do that yet. So maybe we could start it. And on that note, keep up the good work.